In just 17 seconds, Jasmine Crockett dropped a USB into the console, and the screen behind her exploded with a black and white video so chilling it made Donald Trump knock over his mic and scream, "Turn it off." The footage came from room 13C, a sealed chamber inside Mar-a-Lago that the government swore never existed. On that tape, a blurred girl Epstein's voice and Trump's whisper that turned America's blood cold. What did Jasmine show the world that made a former president lose control on live TV? The red tally light blinked once, then locked solid. Live. No edits, no delay. The air inside room 214 of the Rayburn House office building turned dense, like it had absorbed the weight of what was coming. 26 members of Congress sat in their assigned seats, eyes darting toward the center of the horseshoe table. At the far end, Donald Trump sat smug and still fingers, steepled, flanked by aides in dark suits and red ties that looked more like uniforms than fashion choices. The wooden doors creaked open. Jasmine Crockett entered without a word, her navy blue blazer slicing through the air like a blade. Her steps were measured, each one echoing like a countdown no one could stop. The room didn't greet her because it didn't know how to. Cameras from every major network zoomed in as she placed a single manila folder on the table, then looked up. Her expression wasn't angry. It was focused, surgical. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to cut. Trump tilted his head with the lazy grin of a man who thought the show belonged to him. "Back again, Jasmine," he smirked, his voice dripping with mockery. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. "Yes," she said quietly, "and this time I brought receipts." A ripple of whispers swept the chamber. Jasmine reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver USB drive. She held it between two fingers like it was a grenade without a pin. The chair of the hearing Republican Russell Kane adjusted his mic nervously. "Ms. Crockett, if you're about to—" "I am Jasmine," interrupted. "Calm, cold, certain. What's on this drive is evidence the American people were never meant to see. A piece of video buried, deleted, denied, because it leads to a room the government says doesn't exist. Room 13C. Mar-a-Lago." Kane's lips parted, but no sound came out. Behind her, the media pool leaned forward like animals catching the scent of blood. Jasmine turned to the screen. "Play it." In the frozen second before the video rolled, her voice echoed one final time. "We all say we want the truth, but when it stares us in the face, will we look away? If you had one file that could bring the truth to light, would you play it?" The screen flickered once, then locked in place. Grainy, black and white. A slow pan of a windowless room, sterile and dim. There was no sound at first, only the low hum of a ceiling fan and a timestamp in the corner. 2002, room 13C, Mar-a-Lago. Jasmine didn't move. Trump's grin had already vanished. At the center of the frame sat Jeffrey Epstein, legs crossed behind a heavy desk. He glanced toward someone off-screen, adjusted his cuff, and nodded. Then Donald Trump stepped into view, face slightly turned, but unmistakable. The walk, the posture, the voice. He leaned in and asked softly, barely above a whisper, "Is she ready?" Then she entered. A girl, small, maybe 13, maybe younger. Her face was blurred. She looked down, no shoes, shoulders tight. She said nothing, just stood there. Trump turned toward her, and then from off-camera, a voice. Calm. Male. "She's not even 16, Don." It wasn't shouted, it was almost casual. But in room 214 of the Capitol, it dropped like a bomb. Someone audibly gasped. Others sat bolt upright. Chair Kane leaned toward the console, hand hovering over the mute button, but he didn't touch it. Trump jumped to his feet. "Fake! This is fake!" He slapped the table loud enough to echo through the microphone feed. "Turn it off. Turn it off now." But the technician hesitated. No one moved. The video kept playing. Behind Jasmine, the press leaned in so hard they looked like they might fall over the railing. Live news banners flashed red. Breaking. Developing. Uncensored. The chamber didn't blink. Neither did America. Jasmine stared straight ahead. Her voice came low. "If it's fake, why are you screaming?" Trump pointed at her. "This is defamation. This is a witch hunt." His voice cracked at the edges. His collar was damp. His palms pressed to the desk like he needed it to stay standing. Jasmine leaned forward. calm, her words barely above a breath. Then let the witch answer the question. The girl in the footage didn't speak, but her silence was louder than any denial. What do you believe, his reaction or his words? Chairman Russell Kane slammed his gavel twice hard enough to rattle the microphones. That's enough, he barked, voice rising with panic. Cut the feed. That video is inadmissible, out of order. And no, Jasmine said, her tone low but immovable. Her voice stayed level because it didn't need to rise to strike. The word alone stopped the room colder than any gavel could. Kane leaned forward like he was trying to control something already out of reach. This hearing is descending into chaos, he snapped. Jasmine turned to him slowly, her voice cutting through the noise. No, for once it's climbing toward the truth. Then a voice came from the far end of the room, firm, precise. I can verify the footage, said Harold Min, a video forensics analyst rising from the public gallery. Kane's eyes narrowed. You're not scheduled to testify today. Jasmine didn't blink. He is now. Swear him in. The aides hesitated, glancing at each other. But they didn't stop her. They couldn't. Not with half the country watching in real time. Harold walked forward with a laptop cradled in his arms, every step deliberate. The metadata matches. Time codes intact. No digital tampering. The footage is real. Time-stamped, location locked. That is room 13C inside Mar-a-Lago. Trump exhaled sharp and loud as if someone had knocked the wind out of him. His hands clenched on the desk. He mouthed something to his aide, unaware the hot mic picked it up. Get her off that mic. I don't care how. The line echoed across live feeds before anyone could stop it. Kane fumbled with his notes. This isn't proper protocol. Jasmine leaned forward slightly, eyes fixed on Trump. Neither was what happened in that room. Her voice didn't tremble. If this video is fake, why are you sweating? Trump jolted, stood halfway, then sat back down. You think this is funny? He growled. Jasmine shook her head. No. I think it's justice finally seen. The red light above the broadcast camera still burned bright. America was still watching. Kane pounded the gavel again, but this time it sounded hollow, like a man knocking on a door that would no longer open. Jasmine opened her folder. Inside was a freeze frame from the footage, Trump standing beside Epstein, hand reaching for a white envelope. She laid it down on the table. No words, no spin, just truth in ink and image. This isn't about me, she said quietly. It's about the girl you tried to erase, and the silence you built to keep her gone. Trump tried to shout something, but it came out as noise. Behind him, reporters whispered. Cameras kept rolling, and for the first time in that room, no one defended him. What if this is just the beginning? A sudden alert blinked across the courtroom monitors. Incoming Zoom request. The name on the screen was short, impossible to miss, Melania T. The room paused, then erupted in murmurs. Chairman Kane leaned toward the technician. Deny it. We're not doing that. But Jasmine had already turned. Put it through, she said. Kane slammed the gavel. That's not procedure. Jasmine didn't even glance at him. Neither is hiding child abuse. The technician hesitated, then tapped the screen. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the feed loaded. A grainy video appeared, Melania Trump alone in a dark room, camera angled low. Her hair hung limp. Her face was bare. Her eyes colder than anyone expected. She didn't blink, didn't ask permission. Her voice came slow with no emotion. He was warned. That was her first line. The room went silent. Melania continued. I told him the room was too dangerous. Too many cameras. Too many copies. Kane tried to shut it down. Mrs. Trump, this is not the platform, but Melania cut him off. Room 13C was never supposed to be built. It's not in the blueprints. It was carved out behind the main study. They kept it hidden, even from Secret Service. Trump stood up and pointed at the screen. She doesn't know what she's talking about. His voice cracked. She's unstable. Jasmine stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the monitor. Melania's voice softened. He thought it would never come out. He told me that. After Epstein died, gasps. Someone in the media pit dropped a phone. On screen, Melania seemed to hesitate, like she was weighing the cost of one more sentence. Her lips parted, but before she could speak again, the feed went black. Signal lost. No one moved. No one breathed. Jasmine slowly turned back to Kane. Still think this is about politics? Trump's hands trembled. The aides behind him no longer looked confident. One whispered into a phone. Another simply looked down. And Jasmine, there was no smile, no triumph. Just a whisper, soft, solemn, like a vow meant only for history to hear. The cracks are showing. Is loyalty silence or telling the truth? The feed returned with a flicker, then sharpened. Melania was still there, still alone, her face pale but focused. She didn't ask if anyone was listening. She knew they were. There's a drawer, she said slowly. Right side. Bottom cabinet. In the desk, Epstein had moved into 13C. She looked off camera for a moment, almost like checking for shadows. There's a folder inside. It's marked Jane D. Gas rippled through the room. No one dared to move. Jasmine leaned forward, eyes locked on the screen. What's in it? She asked softly. Melania nodded once like she expected the question. Dates, names, notes in his handwriting. One of the pages has Donald's initials. I saw it. The feed cut to black. No warning, just silence. The courtroom erupted, a mix of chaos and disbelief. Kane shouted at the technician who frantically tried to restore the signal. Cameras whirled. Reporters mumbled into microphones. It felt like the floor had just dropped out from under the Capitol. Trump stood up so fast his chair screeched backward. She's unstable, he barked, voice breaking. She's not well. She's lying. His hands trembled. His face flushed. The room could smell the panic. Jasmine turned to face him, calm, composed, no fear in her voice. And yet, you flinched. Trump froze. The room saw it. The pause. The way he didn't answer. The crack in the armor. Jasmine didn't push. She didn't need to. The silence said more than any cross-examination ever could. People don't flinch at lies, they flinch at memories. Melania's words still hung in the air like smoke. Jane D., a drawer, a folder, a set of initials she wasn't supposed to see. Outside the chamber, news alerts were already firing. Former First Lady names hidden evidence. Jane D. file connected to room 13C. Melania breaks, years of silence. But inside the real story was simpler. Jasmine had drawn blood, not with fury, with facts. What would make a First Lady betray a president on live TV before the shock could settle? Another figure stood up. Ava Rodriguez, former FBI, whistleblower, fired after getting too close to Epstein's sealed records in 2016. Now she walked to the front of the chamber with a calm so sharp it made the room tighten. In her hands, a sealed envelope. She didn't speak until she laid it gently on the table directly in front of Chairman Kane. This, she said, was never meant to survive the shredder. Kane stared at it like it was radioactive. Jasmine nodded. Open it. Kane hesitated, then pulled the red string loose. Inside were 3 items, each one heavier than the last. The first, a flight log, original, unedited. Trump's name circled in blue pen on 5 separate flights, all marked private. All within the same year Epstein purchased the island. The second, a CD labeled only with the date June 2002. Kane inserted it into the player. A soft click, then the sound filled the room. It was Trump's voice. Clear, no echo, no edits. You said she was from Georgia, he said. She doesn't talk much. That's good. A collective inhale swept the gallery. Kane reached for the stop button, but Jasmine raised a hand. Let it finish. Then came Epstein's voice. No names. You know the rules. And finally, the third item, a handwritten note. Torn, smudged. It read, keep drawer locked. JD too loud. No signature. But the handwriting matched Epstein's archived letters. Ava had brought those too. Kane looked like the floor had vanished beneath him. Trump didn't yell, didn't slam his fist. He just turned his face away from the cameras. Slowly, quietly, like he'd just watched something in himself rot in public. Jasmine stood. She didn't point, didn't grandstand. She just said one sentence soft enough that some leaned in to hear. This is no longer an allegation. It's evidence. Behind her, the press was already moving. Cameras clicked. Phones shook. But for once, there was no spin. Just raw, unfiltered truth sitting on a table in a silent room. What else has America refused to believe until now? Before anyone could speak again, a loud chime echoed from the far wall, a system alert. Everyone turned. One of the congressional aides, pale and trembling, stepped forward with a tablet in hand. "Madam Chair," she whispered, "we just received a digital subpoena override." Kane frowned. "From who, Internal Justice?" The aide hesitated, then read aloud. "This hearing is now subject to federal observance. A new witness has been approved for emergency testimony, Agent Thomas D. Kessler." The chamber erupted. Gasps, murmurs. A CNN anchor blurted out live. "That's the name on the Epstein file audit. From 2018, he disappeared after testifying in secret." The rear doors opened. A man entered, graying at the temples, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He walked straight to the center and placed a thick envelope on the evidence table. "I recorded everything," he said flatly. "Every night, every hallway, every exit." That room was never silent. Jasmine turned to him, stunned. "You were the internal camera lead at Mar-a-Lago." He nodded once. "I buried the drives after Epstein died, but I made copies because I knew who'd try to erase them." Trump bolted upright. "He's a liar. He's disgraced. That man was fired. Kessler cut him off." "No, I resigned the day I saw you hand Epstein the white envelope." The room went still. Kane's voice trembled. "What's in the envelope?" Kessler answered with no hesitation. "Cash, a photo, and a birth certificate, all in the name of Jane D." The chamber held still, as if time itself had paused to hear what came next. Ava Rodriguez stood beside the evidence table, holding a single printed page. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. The following is a transcript from a monitored call intercepted July 2002 under federal wiretap authority. She read, "Trump, just get me something quiet. Young but quiet. He keeps his mouth shut. I'll keep mine. Epstein done, but I need that statement buried. Trump, she's yours, just like before." The room cracked open. Someone gasped. A camera snapped too loud. One of Trump's aides knocked over a water bottle. Kane looked like he might vomit. Trump's face flushed deep red. He pointed toward Ava. "That's fake. That's fabricated." He turned to Kane. "This is a violation of my rights." But Jasmine finally stood. Her heels echoed like a metronome against marble. She walked to the center of the room, placed both hands on the table, and stared straight into the broadcast camera. "This isn't politics," she said. "It's procurement." No one dared speak. No one dared blink. Trump's mouth opened, then closed. The muscle in his jaw twitched. He looked smaller now, like a man whose suit no longer fit. Kane tried to speak, but nothing came out. Behind Jasmine, the press was still writing, but slower, more careful. The headlines were already forming, but for once, no one reached for spin. Just silence. Cold, loud silence. Jasmine glanced across the room, not at Trump, but at the gallery. The mothers, the veterans, the interns holding clipboards with trembling hands. This is what buried voices sound like when they finally rise. Can justice still matter if it arrives this late? Trump's voice cracked through the chamber like a thunderclap. "You're playing with fire," he shouted, his face flushed deep red. Hand trembling as it pointed at Jasmine like an accusation he couldn't finish. His chest rose too fast, like the walls were closing in. Behind him, aides froze, unsure if they should step forward or disappear. Jasmine stood still, unblinking, unmoved. Like a wall the storm couldn't touch. She simply looked him in the eye and said, calm as a storm right before it breaks, "Then let's burn down the lie." She reached into her folder and pulled out a thin stack of papers. No theatrics, no build-up, just quiet force. These are medical intake records from Palm Beach Memorial Hospital, July 14, 2002, 2:47 p.m. She laid the first sheet down. Female patient, age 13, no guardian present, no ID. Brought in by a man who refused to give his name. She laid down the next page. Diagnosis: internal bruising, no follow-up, no police report, no record past that night. The final page hovered in her hand. This, she said, holding it up, happened the exact hour the footage from room 13C was recorded. A hush swept the room like a cold wind. Reporter stopped typing. A woman in the gallery put a hand over her mouth. Even Kane looked away. Trump stood motionless. His lips moved, but no sound came. It was like watching someone slowly realize the mask had slipped and there was no putting it back on. Jasmine's voice softened. She didn't even get a name. Just a chart. Just pain. Just silence. She turned toward him again. And you kept walking. Trump let out a short, awkward laugh, trying to fill the silence. But it came out wrong. Choked. Hollow. Like a man trying to cough up a secret that had already been spoken. Jasmine closed the folder with care, the way someone might lower a casket. "This isn't about politics," she said. "This is about a girl who was invisible until today." No one clapped, no one spoke. The silence in the chamber felt heavier than truth. When do we stop excusing the powerful? The screen, still glowing in the dim chamber, flickered once more. A technician at the back muttered something, then froze. "There's more," he said. The file didn't finish. Eyes turned back to the monitor just as the video resumed, this time without warning. The timestamp showed 7 seconds left. The camera angle had shifted. Epstein now stood arms crossed as Trump approached from the edge of the frame. No smiles, no performance. Just a man handing over a white envelope. No words at first, just silence and that soft mechanical hum. Then Trump spoke. "She's disposable, like the others." It wasn't loud, it wasn't even angry. It was casual, like he was commenting on the weather or ordering lunch. But it landed like a grenade in the room. One woman in the gallery covered her mouth. Another whispered, "Oh my God." Reporters didn't write, they just stared. And Donald Trump, standing at the edge of the table, said nothing. No denial, no fury, just quiet. Jasmine didn't move at first. She waited, watched as the final frame froze, Trump's hand still hovering over Epstein's. The envelope half exchanged. History caught mid-bargain. Then she reached over and gently closed her laptop. The click echoed. No one else made a sound. She rose and faced the room. Her voice came low, steady. But now, she has a name. No drama, no performance. Just a statement delivered like a verdict. Trump lowered his gaze, his hands clenched. But he said nothing. Not a word. Kane looked at his watch, then at the press pool, then at Jasmine. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone like gravity had doubled. You could feel it in the air, thick as smoke. No prepared remarks, no rehearsed lines. Just that one phrase playing over and over again. "She's disposable, like the others." Jasmine looked to the gallery, to the families, to the young interns in the back row gripping their phones. "That was 7 seconds," she said, "and it told you everything." The red tally light was still glowing. The world was still watching. Can a nation heal? After hearing that the clip didn't just end, it detonated. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. From newsrooms to living rooms, from churches in Mississippi to barbershops in Detroit. Screens everywhere played the same haunting line on loop. "She's disposable, like the others." In a Baptist church on the south side of Atlanta, a pastor paused his sermon mid-sentence and turned the projector on. In a high school gym in Chicago, teachers dimmed the lights and let their students listen. And in a corner barbershop in East Baltimore, no one said a word until an old woman finally spoke through tears. She said what we've known all along. She just had the guts to say it on record. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat alone in a quiet diner outside Dallas. No cameras, no staffers. Just a half-eaten plate of eggs going cold in front of her. The world outside buzzed with headlines and hashtags, but inside the silence felt heavier than any gavel. She didn't touch her phone, didn't check the news. She just stared out the window like she was waiting for the noise to catch up. Then the door chimed. A man in scrubs walked in, still wearing his hospital badge. Mid-50s, black, tired eyes. He didn't say much, just walked past the booths, stopped by her table, and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Some of us," he said, voice low, "have waited our whole lives to hear that truth said out loud." Jasmine looked up. For the first time that day, her expression broke. Not into tears, not into words. Just a slow nod, like she knew exactly what he meant. Outside, people passed with phones glued to their ears, mouths open in disbelief. Inside that diner, nothing moved, except maybe history. What happens when the silence breaks in every household? 3 days later, Chairman Russell Kane resigned without holding a press conference. No farewell speech, no explanation, Just a signed letter delivered to the press pool at 6:12 a.m. His office emptied by noon. By sunset, his nameplate was already gone from the door. J.D. Vance, once a nightly fixture on cable news, vanished from headlines altogether. No new tweets, no press statements, just silence. His last known appearance was outside a courthouse, eyes down, refusing to speak. Meanwhile, Jasmine turned down every interview request. CNN, PBS, even 60 Minutes. She didn't want lights, she didn't want angles. That morning, she flew alone to a small brick plaza tucked behind a shelter for runaway teens just outside Cleveland. They're built into the wall were 100 names carved into stone, and dozens more marked only as Jane Doe. She stood before one in particular, Jane Doe, 2002. No date of birth, no age, just a year in a void. Ava arrived minutes later holding a single red rose. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Together they knelt in silence. Ava placed the flower beneath the engraving and stepped back. Jasmine reached out and brushed her fingers along the name, not to clean it, just to acknowledge it. Like it deserved to be touched. The cameras stayed away. This wasn't for them. A young woman, maybe 19, walked past with a tray of food from the shelter's kitchen. She paused, stared, then whispered, "That one. She used to sit where I sit now." Jasmine turned to her, eyes soft. "Then we're going to make sure the world remembers that." And in that quiet courtyard surrounded by walls full of names, no one fought for Jasmine. Crockett finally let herself exhale. Is justice still justice if it comes too late? The chamber was quiet again. Not tense, not chaotic. Just quiet, the kind that settles after a storm. Jasmine Crockett stepped through the same doors she'd entered days ago, but this time the air felt different. No reporters swarming her, no protest signs, just stillness waiting to be filled. She walked slowly to the same microphone. No folder, no evidence, just her. She looked out at the half-full room, no longer packed with cameras but with people who had stayed, who needed to stay. She didn't clear her throat, didn't check her notes. She simply spoke. Truth doesn't scream, it survives, that was all. For a moment no one moved. Then from the back row an older woman stood up, alone. She clapped once, then twice, then kept going. Others followed, first a few, then a dozen, then the whole room stood. No chants, no shouting, just hands coming together, slow and steady. Applause not for a performance, but for something that had finally broken through. Jasmine didn't bow. She didn't smile. She simply nodded once, like she knew this wasn't hers to claim. It belonged to the ones who never got the chance to speak. The red tally light above the camera blinked twice, then went dark. Live coverage ended. But no one left their seats. Outside, the world was still turning. But inside that chamber, something had shifted. It wasn't victory. It wasn't closure. It was weight, a new kind. The kind that demands we carry it forward. Because justice doesn't come when the powerful fall. It comes when the powerless finally stand. Sometimes the quietest sentence echoes louder than any verdict. Not everyone gets the chance to speak, but when one person dares to stand, they speak for all those the world tried to forget. What part of this story made you stop and feel something? Share your thoughts, because sometimes change begins with a single voice. If this story struck a nerve, don't just scroll past it. Like, share, and subscribe to Hill Insights, where hidden truths are brought into the light and silence is no longer an option. Tap the bell so you never miss the moment when truth dares to speak again. What moment stayed with you? What line made you pause? Tell us in the comments, because your voice might be the one that helps someone else finally feel seen. This dramatized story is inspired by real struggles and real people. All characters and dialogue are fictionalized for commentary and education. It is not intended to defame or mislead, but to inspire reflection and civic awareness. Thanks for watching. The truth isn't over, it's just waiting to be heard.